I did not cry. I did not confront anyone. I simply smiled, nodded, and started building the case that would dismantle everything they thought they owned. That is the part they never understood about me. They looked at me and saw the quiet one, the responsible one, the one who showed up to every family dinner with a dish to pass, and left without making a scene. They mistook my silence for weakness, my patience for compliance, and my calm for someone who could be managed. They were wrong about all of it. My name is Lily. I am 30 years old, and I work in title insurance. I spend my days reviewing property records, verifying ownership chains, catching discrepancies in deeds before they become disasters. I know what a forged signature looks like. I know how to trace the exact moment a document was altered. I know which county clerk offices keep digital timestamps and which ones still use ink logs. My brother Derek knew none of that. Neither did my parents. That was their first mistake. My grandmother passed away on a Tuesday in late October. She was 81, sharp until the very end, and she smelled like lavender and strong coffee. She raised me for 3 years when I was in middle school, while my parents were dealing with things I will not go into here. And those 3 years shaped me more than anything else in my life. She taught me to keep records. She taught me that a handshake means nothing without paper behind it. She taught me that love without documentation is just a feeling someone can rewrite later. She left me her house. The deed was transferred before she passed, handled by her personal attorney, filed with the county, clean and clear. 3 bedrooms, a small yard, a detached garage, and 22 years of memory in every room. It was worth roughly $400,000 in the current market. My parents found that out at the estate reading. I watched my mother's face when the attorney read the clause. She had been sitting with her hands folded in her lap, wearing the expression she always wore when she expected to receive something, a kind of patient entitlement, like someone waiting for their name to be called at a restaurant they believed they had a reservation at. When the attorney said my name, her hands unfolded. When he said the full transfer had already been completed, her jaw tightened. My father looked at Derek. Derek looked at me. I looked at my hands. 3 weeks later, my mother called to say they needed to talk. She used the word clarify. She said grandmother had always intended for the house to stay in the family, meaning all of them, not just me. She said it was not fair that I had gotten something so significant when my brother was struggling. She said she hoped I would be reasonable. I said I would think about it. I did not think about it. What I did was call my friend Janet at the county recorder's office and ask her to flag the property for any incoming filings. Then I called my attorney, Marcus, and told him I thought something was coming. Marcus had known me for 4 years. He did not ask questions. He just said, "Send me everything you have." I sent him everything. 2 months passed. I continued going to Sunday dinners. I brought food. I asked Derek about his job, which he did not have, and about his wife Cassandra, who smiled at me the way a person smiles at someone they are about to outmaneuver. I asked my mother how her back was doing. I helped my father with his crossword puzzle. I was the same Lily I had always been on the surface. Underneath the surface, I was documenting everything. The dinner where my mother mentioned a real estate contact she had made. The evening Derek talked about how the market was hot right now and it would be a shame to let an asset like that just sit there. The text message my mother sent at 11:30 on a Wednesday that said, "We found a solution that works for everyone. Can you come by Saturday?" I screenshotted it. I saved it to 2 places. I did not go on Saturday. I said I had work. What I had was a phone call from Janet. Someone had submitted a quitclaim deed to the county recorder's office. The property was my grandmother's house. The deed listed Derek as a co-owner with me, signed with what was supposed to be my signature, notarized by someone named Robert Finch, dated 6 weeks after my grandmother passed. I had not signed anything. I had never heard of Robert Finch. I sat in my car in the parking lot of a coffee shop for 11 minutes after that call. I did not cry. I thought about the exact weight of what they had done. They had forged my signature on a legal property document. That is not a family disagreement. That is a felony. That is fraud. That is identity theft with a real estate instrument attached to it, which carries its own set of statutes. And I knew every single one of them because I had written continuing education materials about them for my company's training portal. I called Marcus. He said the word I was thinking, quietly, and without drama. And then he said, "Do not touch anything. Do not confront anyone. Let me work." I said, "I know. I've been waiting for this." The thing about forging a real estate document is that it leaves marks everywhere. The notary has a journal. The recorder's office has a timestamp. The ink composition on the signature can be tested. And in my case, the forged signature was submitted while I was at a conference in another city, checked into a hotel under my name, with a key card entry log that showed exactly where I was at the time that document was supposedly signed. I had been to that conference every year for 5 years. I had photos, receipts, a hotel loyalty account, and a name badge with a barcode. I had not planned any of this as a trap. I had simply lived my life carefully and kept records, the way my grandmother had taught me. But from the outside, once Marcus started pulling the threads, it looked like I had orchestrated a masterclass. I let it look that way. Marcus found Robert Finch within a week. He was a notary who operated out of a UPS store 2 towns over. When Marcus's investigator spoke with him, he said a woman had brought the document in and said her sister was not available in person, but had pre-signed, and that this was standard procedure for family property transfers. He had not looked up the statute. He had not verified identity properly. He was cooperative and terrified and suddenly very interested in providing a written statement. The woman who had brought in the document matched a description of Cassandra. I continued going to Sunday dinners. I brought a pasta salad. I asked Derek if he had thought any more about getting his certification renewed. He said he had been too busy. I said that made sense. Cassandra asked about my work and I said things were interesting right now, which was true. My mother asked, very carefully, if I had looked into the property situation any further. I said I was letting Marcus handle the details. She smiled and said that sounded very sensible. I smiled back. I was aware, in that moment, of the exact parallel between my mother's expression and what I imagined a person looks like right before they realize a trapdoor has opened beneath them. But she did not know that yet. So I just asked her if she wanted more pasta salad. Marcus sent a letter on a Thursday. It went to my parents' house and to my brother's apartment, certified mail, return receipt. It outlined the following: the existence of a fraudulently filed quitclaim deed, the notary's statement, the hotel records from my conference, the timestamps from the county recorder's office showing the filing had occurred while I was 300 miles away, and a forensic document analysis of the signature, which had been compared to samples of my actual signature on file, and showed 7 distinct structural deviations. The letter stated that I was prepared to refer the matter to the county district attorney's office, and that I had already been in contact with the state's financial crimes unit regarding the identity theft component. It stated that if my brother and his wife wished to discuss an alternative resolution, they had 14 days to respond through counsel. It also stated, very specifically, that any attempt to contact me directly, rather than through Marcus, would be treated as witness tampering. My phone rang 17 times that evening. I let it go to voicemail every time. My mother, my father, Derek, my mother again. A number I didn't recognize that turned out to be Derek calling from Cassandra's phone. I read a book. I made tea. I went to sleep at a reasonable hour. They retained an attorney 9 days later. His name was Paul, and Marcus told me afterward that Paul had called him sounding like a man who had just been handed a folder he had not expected and was trying to figure out how to put it back down. His clients, Paul explained, had believed the document was a routine family matter. His clients had not intended to circumvent any legal process. His clients were willing to have the deed reversed and expunged. Marcus told Paul that reversal was the minimum, not the resolution. A meeting was scheduled. A conference room at Marcus's office, 10 in the morning on a Friday. My parents, Derek, Cassandra, their attorney Paul, me, and Marcus. I wore a gray blazer. I brought a notepad I had no intention of writing on. I arrived 7 minutes early and poured myself a glass of water and sat with my hands flat on the table. They arrived together, all 4 of them. My mother looked like she had not slept. My father looked like a man who had recently understood the size of something for the first time. Derek sat down and did not look at me. Cassandra sat beside him and looked at her phone until Paul told her to put it away. Paul opened the meeting by saying that his clients wished to express their regret for the misunderstanding. Marcus said, "Let's define misunderstanding for the record." Paul said the deed filing had been an error in judgment, made under the assumption that the family had a shared understanding of the property's intended use. Marcus slid a folder across the table. Inside was the notary's signed statement, the hotel records, the forensic signature analysis, and a printed page from the state criminal statutes listing the relevant charges, with estimated sentencing ranges highlighted in yellow. Paul looked at the folder. He looked at Marcus. He looked at his clients. Cassandra's expression did not change, but she went very still, in a way that I recognized as the stillness of someone recalculating. Marcus said, "My client has chosen not to refer this matter to the DA at this time. However, that decision is contingent on several conditions being met in full." Paul asked what the conditions were. Marcus laid them out. The deed would be reversed immediately, with all associated costs borne by Derek and Cassandra. A notarized letter of acknowledgement, signed by both of them, would be placed in the property file, stating that Lily Harmon is the sole owner of the property, that no claims by any family member are valid, and that this acknowledgement is made freely and without duress. My brother and his wife would have no further contact with any county recorder's office regarding this property or any property in my name. And finally, my parents would sign a separate acknowledgement that they had knowledge of the intent to file the fraudulent deed, which Marcus would hold but not file unless further action became necessary. My father said, "We did not know what they were going to do." Marcus said, "Your phone records tell a different story, and you should speak with Paul before you make any more statements in this room." My father stopped talking. My mother turned to look at me for the first time since they had walked in. She had the expression I had been waiting to see, not guilt. Exactly. Because I do not think she had the architecture for guilt the way most people experience it. It was something closer to the look of someone who has been holding a winning hand and has just watched the cards turn over in someone else's favor, like the game was supposed to go differently, and she could not quite locate the moment it changed. I looked back at her and said nothing. She said, "Lily, we are your family." I said, "I know." She said, "We were trying to make sure things stayed in the family." I said, "The house was already in the family. It was in my name. Your attorney can explain how property rights work if that part is unclear." My mother looked at Paul. Paul did not offer to explain property rights. The conditions were accepted. All of them. Paul asked for 48 hours to prepare the paperwork, and Marcus said 24, and Paul said he would do his best. Every document was signed within the following morning. The quitclaim deed was reversed and expunged from the county records by the end of the business week. The acknowledgement letters were notarized, scanned, and placed in a digital file that Marcus keeps with the same care I keep my own records. The Financial Crimes Unit call was a different conversation. I had spoken with them before the meeting, and after the signed acknowledgements came through, I called back and gave them an update. They said the decision to pursue charges was mine, and that the documentation I had provided was sufficient to proceed if I chose to. I told them I would be in touch if the situation changed. It has not changed. The letters sit in Marcus's file. I do not think about them every day, but I know they are there, and so does everyone who signed something. What I think about more often is a conversation I had with my grandmother about 3 years before she passed. We were sitting on the porch of the house that is now legally, unambiguously mine, and she was telling me about a dispute her own mother had faced over a piece of land, decades before either of us was born. Someone in the family had tried to rewrite the story of who owned what. Her mother had lost that fight because she had not kept her paperwork. My grandmother said, "People always rewrite the story in their favor when they think no one is watching. The only thing that stops them is evidence they cannot explain away." She handed me a folder as she said it. Inside was every document related to the house, the original purchase, every tax record, every deed transfer, her will, a handwritten note in her own handwriting that said, "This house belongs to Lily, and I have made certain that fact is bulletproof." I had that folder in my bag the morning of the conference room meeting. I did not take it out. I did not need to, but I wanted it with me. The way you carry something that grounds you when the world tries to make you feel like the floor is moving. The floor was not moving. I had checked. Derek and Cassandra moved to another city 4 months after the meeting. I heard this from a cousin, not from my parents. My parents and I see each other on holidays, and the conversations are careful and surface level in the way that conversations become, when everyone in the room knows what was said but no one is going to say it again. My father asked me once, over a Christmas dinner that my mother had cooked and that I had brought dessert to because some habits are hard to break, whether I thought things would ever go back to normal between us. I said, "I think this is the new normal, Dad." He nodded like that was the answer he expected. My mother passed the sweet potatoes and did not say anything. I live in the house now. I repainted 2 of the bedrooms and left one exactly as it was when my grandmother used it. I kept her coffee mug on the shelf where she always kept it. On Sunday mornings when I sit on that porch, I can almost smell the lavender. I still keep meticulous records. I still flag anything unusual in the property files. I still call Janet when something feels off. I have learned that the people who try to take what belongs to you are rarely strangers. They are usually people who have watched you long enough to believe they understand your limits. They have mistaken your patience for passivity. They have decided that because you did not react the first time, or the 5th time, or the 20th time, you have no reaction left. They do not account for the possibility that you were simply waiting until the reaction was worth something. They do not account for the woman who knows exactly what a forged signature looks like, who has a colleague at the county recorder's office, who has a conference badge with a timestamp, who has an attorney named Marcus, who does not ask unnecessary questions, and who learned from an 81-year-old woman in a house that smelled like lavender that the most powerful thing you can do when someone is trying to rewrite your story is to have already written it down first. I did not scream. I did not argue. I did not show up at their door with accusations they could dismiss. I just kept the records, and when the time came, the records spoke for themselves.